Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first part of the King of the Rusted Crown series. In this video, we will be sculpting a maquette, and this is the first step uh, that I usually do when sculpting a bigger project like this. This is going to be a 3/4 life-size figure, and there's some design elements that I need to figure out. And yes, so the maquette is kind of a way for me to think with my clay, essentially, so I don't have to think too much about it, and I can just kind of go for it once I finish the maquette and it's time to sculpt the big one. I don't have to think about it too much, and I've kind of solved a lot of my design issues already. This video is not going to be so much about how I sculpt. That's going to be once we start on the bigger sculpture, and we'll take a lot of time showing off how I do everything, build armature, and I'll talk a lot more about process then. But what this video is going to be about is a couple of different things, and one of them is, why do I sculpt a maquette? What's the point? I have a model, I have a pose that I like, so what's really the reason to sculpt a maquette? And perhaps there really is no, you can make an argument that the reasons might not be as, so good. Perhaps it's a waste of model time and a waste of money, but I always found that sculpting a maquette kind of helps me, especially in something like this where there are design elements. There is a base, I'm going to be cropping off the legs, so there is some sort of design element that needs to be figured out. And I find that the maquette process is very helpful for that. You get to actually see the three-dimensional object. Another reason why I'm not going to be talking so much about how I'm sculpting here is because this is a very small thing, a small scale, and I'm kind of not following the process that I normally would 100%. So I'm doing a couple of kind of stupid things. I'm trying to work a little bit faster also because again, I don't want to be spending a week on this. I want to spend maybe a couple of hours, and I want to I want to spend my model time sculpting the big sculpture. But I kind of need, before I can even start deciding, I need to have something up there, right? I need to have something that looks more or less like the finished sculpture that I'm going to end up making. So I need to spend some time, but I usually end up working a touch too fast. So you get a bunch of proportional issues here probably, which is okay. It's just a maquette. It's not supposed to be this perfect sculpture anyway. So what I'm trying to do when I sculpt a maquette is to decide on a design. I decide on a crop, decide on a base, and also allow the model to settle into the pose a little bit. I'm going to be sculpting this figure over the 3/4 life-size figure. I'm probably going to spend 7, 8, 10 weeks maybe sculpting it, and if I race off in the beginning and set off at an intense pace, the pose that my model is in during the first 3-4 sessions when I set everything up might not be the pose that he's in 3 weeks down the line, and that can potentially lead to problems, right? I'm going to end up trying to sculpt something that is not really there. That can be very difficult, so that's less than ideal. So spending 1 or 2 sessions with your model, making a maquette, kind of sorting out your design and allowing the model to kind of get into the pose that he's going to end up having, he or she is going to end up holding for you for however long you're going to work with them, I find can be quite beneficial. It also helps to familiarize myself with what I'm sculpting, what I'm going to be sculpting when I sculpt a life size. For example, in this maquette, I discovered that there is, whenever you have elements that interact with each other, which I will have in this sculpture, arms and hands and head and hands and arms, they all interact with each other here. And it's important that you set those up in the right order so that, you don't have to compromise, or you have to compromise as little as possible at least. And so, I realized this in this maquette, that I perhaps did too much on the arms too early, and then the head kind of has to fit the arms and the hands, which is not what I don't think that is going to work very well here in the final life size. So that's definitely something that I'm going to try to avoid. I'll probably end up sculpting the head in the position that I want it to be in, and then I'll sculpt the arms and the hand to kind of fit the head a little bit more, which is, again, arms and hands touch more flexible than where I can put the head also. So probably something I should have thought of just in general, but at least now I've made that mistake already, right? So that's pretty helpful. So as I go along with this, I discover new things about the approach and the process that I need to think about in this particular sculpture. And perhaps in another sculpture, these things would have been less important. And in that sense, the maquette ends up being as much about what I don't end up wanting in my final sculpture as what I end up wanting in my final sculpture. Now, of course, if I wanted to make this perfectly what I was going to end up sculpting, I could have worked more on it. I could have said, you know, at a certain point in this process, I could have stopped and said, okay, this did not end up the way that I wanted it to, and I can start again, you know, refine pose, for example, and things like this in the next one, or try to 100% get the type of emotion that I'm looking for out of the final sculpture, out of the maquette as well. And I don't think I necessarily got that on this try, right? But for me, at least, I find that that's okay. I can figure those things. Some of those things it's nice to leave for the bigger one, for the big sculpture, so that I haven't solved every issue essentially, but I have discovered a lot of issues and a lot of things that I want to look out for and watch out for, which is also very helpful. So in that sense, this is kind of a practice run, a test run almost, for the bigger sculpture. So you'll see me sculpt this, take this maquette, and I'll take it, you know, pretty much as far as I would have needed it to, or as I would have liked to do, and as I would have needed it to serve the purpose that I would like it to serve. However, probably off camera, I will end up refining this and pushing it and making it a little bit nicer, because I do want to make plaster casts of this and put them up on my web store once that actually gets up and running. And so hopefully around maybe June, July, if you would like to, this maquette will be available for you to buy a plaster cast of, for example, from my web store, which there is a link to in the description. Well, there's a link to my website. My web store doesn't exist anymore, or yet, but it will by July, hopefully. But I take this maquette in the video as far as I needed to. And if I you know, of course, I could work 100 hours on this and make it this completely 100% refined thing. I'm probably not going to end up doing that, but I will take it a little bit further for you guys too, so it looks, you know, a little bit nicer as a finished product as well. A couple of other things I discovered is that when I eventually end up sculpting the crown, I'm probably going to need to come up with something that makes it so that the crown is a solid shape, you know. It's a king, after all, needs a crown, and I don't really know how they make crowns. I haven't looked at a lot of crown reference, I guess, but I imagine at least that because it's a hard metal object, it needs to be, you know, quite symmetrical and nice and round, or perhaps more egg-shaped. I don't really know what type of shape crowns have. I might have to do some more research into that. What's more important, though, is that I figured out that it's quite hard to make something appear as a hard object just freehanding it. So I'll probably build some sort of armature, or use some, you know, some aluminum shim stock to kind of create a round shape, and use that as the armature for the crown in the final big sculpture. And finally, just so you guys know, those of you who are interested, know a little bit more about how the format and how the next few parts are gonna be coming out once I start sculpting the big sculpture. I'm probably gonna end up sculpting or releasing a video every week or every 2 weeks. I hope to do one every 2 weeks. We'll see how that goes. Or every week, sorry. We'll see how that goes. I'm gonna compress 2 days into one video, and we'll probably end up, I hope at least, with maybe 12, 15 parts, hopefully. A lot of the work at the end ends up being pretty boring and monotonous, so I might be able to put more than 2 days together, but we'll see how that goes. They'll be sped up just like this, 400%. And if you have any, you know, not complaints, but, well, complaints as well, but constructive criticism and things that you would like perhaps to see different, please let me know. I've gotten a couple of requests for videos on how I make life-size armatures, and I'll show that off pretty soon, I hope. And also a couple of requests to do more beginner figures. This is obviously quite a complex project, but I'll hopefully pretty soon in the future I'm gonna make an attempt at making a half life-size figure, which is kind of it's a beginner project, but of course you can take it as far as you'd like, and I've seen people take half life-size to a different something that is not for beginners, let's put it that way. But at least every single process that we teach at the Florence Academy is kind of put into one project that is quite manageable for a beginner in a half life size. So hopefully soon I'll be able to start one of those and show you guys that as well. Thank you for watching. In the next video we will build the armature for the final 3/4 life-size sculpture, and by the end of the week I will hopefully have released the first video on sculpting the King of the Rusted Crown. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again for more. Thank you for watching.